What's going on, you guys? So, I already did the A-pillar bars on my car, but I figured I could go ahead and walk you through the steps that I use to build A-pillars on a roll cage. Now, quick disclaimer, this is not going to be a step-by-step on how to build the A-pillar bars, also known as side hoops. They're called different things, but I just call them the A-pillar bars. Basically the bars that go down from the floor here, up the side of the A-pillar, across the roof, into the main hoop there. You can see I already got the ones on my car done. They are not perfect. I did make a mistake on one of my included angles here. This end of this bar was actually supposed to be about here, so it was off by about 3/4 of an inch. And all that was honestly due to me having sloppy handwriting. Something as stupid as that. That was supposed to be a 22-degree included angle, and I actually made it 26 because I thought it said 26. So my bad, but if I wouldn't have screwed that up, they actually probably would have been a lot tighter and a lot nicer, but I didn't want to waste the material. But anyways, let's move on. I'll show you how I got all the angles and included angles figured out for this. So for starters, doing it this way will require wasting some material. You can measure it all and bend it all in one shot, but if you want to get it closer the first time and you don't do these very often, it's easier to build them in multiple sections, wasting a little bit of material. Well, basically the way we would do that is I have a digital angle finder here, and we would go ahead and basically get a rough idea of our first angle here on the bar that we would need, take our measurements, and then we would bend up this bar first. And that bar would look just like this when it's done. Now after we would get that one done, what I would do, it's kind of hard for me to show you this because I already have an A-pillar tacked into the car, but what I would do is kind of stick this up in here, tuck it up the way I wanted it, get all the angles set the way I wanted it in the position I wanted it to be, and then just take some masking tape, kind of tape it in place to hold it up there. And then after that, I would find my next bend, find the angle on that, the next bend, and then the very last bend, and just kind of do small pieces, piece it all together very slowly, trying to keep all the cuts super straight and all that. And basically what I would do is tack a bunch of pieces together, and basically I would just tack all these pieces together with all the little bends that I made. This is where the leg of the last piece that goes to the floor goes. I dropped this when I was done with it and the leg broke off. But you go through, make your little bends. Some spaces, like this was one bend, here was another bend where I wanted it to be. Had some gap between the two of them, so I just took a piece of tube, tacked it together just to get the lengths right. Went through, measured out, where the bends need to start. And then after all this was done, I went through, measured the angles, and then found the included angles. Now, in order to find the included angles and all the spacing and everything, basically what I would do is I would set the bars back up in my tube bender. So say for this bar here, we'd set that back in my tube bender, pull it under load and realize, okay, this is a 60-degree bend. Go on to the next one. Line it up with our die mark where we started the bend at, and then get that under zero load, and then see, okay, well that's a 14-degree bend. And now, since there's some included angle in this, basically you can kind of see how this is flat on the table here as if it's coming through the die. That leg is angled downward. And that's your included angle. So for that angle, I always measured my included angles off of the same bar just to stay with consistency. So this was actually a 22-degree included angle. Then we would go over to our next bend here, same thing, put that up in the die, found out that's 16 degrees, and then with that included, we have a 55-degree included angle. And then on to the next one, which is this last bend, same thing again, but this time, well, I don't know, see if I can find a way to set this up a little better. So with that bend flat, now we have an upward included angle. So while going back through and measuring all of these, I'd take into consideration how far apart the marks between the starts of the bends, the included angle, and the actual angle bend. And then on this last piece here, I'd cut this short from where it needed to go to the main hoop, just enough to notch out a piece of tubing to fit up in the notch against the main hoop, and then tack weld that on in place in line with where it needed to be. And then all I did after that was I took the whole main hoop and stuck it into my hole saw. Well, my notcher. I stuck it into the notcher. And basically what I did was take this, get it set up in the notcher, line it up with the blade, and then measure the angle of this tube, the distance between the start of the bend here, the beginning of the notch, that way I know where to start the notch, and then we have everything. We have the angle we need for the notch, we have the distance it needs to be, and doing it this way makes it a lot simpler to get it right when doing the final bar, as long as you're not like me and can't read your own handwriting. Now, unfortunately, I did not record the process of building the bars and all of that. Hopefully this gives you some kind of idea of how I did it. I hope I made it simple enough to understand. I know it can kind of be a little complicated, but hopefully I tried to make it as simple as possible. If you have any questions on it, just post down below. But from what I've found is that's one of the easiest ways to figure out how to do your main side hoops or A-pillar bars, whatever you want to call them. That's the best way that works for me. I've found it wastes the least amount of material because you can get all your measurements correct the first time. Like I said, the only mistake I made was my handwriting, and I accidentally put 4 degrees extra of included angle into my bar, which made, 3/4 of an inch off of where I wanted to be up top. Overall, though, it tucks tight to the roof still, plenty of head clearance, and it's far within spec, and it's going to be good to go for what we need. Doing that bar and figuring out, doing the cutting and kind of tacking together procedure, that overall took about 5 to 6 hours to do, to get it all figured out where I liked it, test fitting with my helmet on, stuff like that. The first bar that we fully bent took about 3 hours because made the mistake of adding too much included angle, spent a bunch of time going back trying to figuring out where I made a mistake, what went wrong, how did this happen. And then once I figured that out, we were able to actually work a couple of the other angles and some things differently to kind of cancel that out without it being a huge difference, but it was still off by a little bit. And then we threw that calculation into our other bar to make them identical, and the driver's side bar we banged out in about 45 minutes. So it didn't take too long. And I'm pretty pleased with how they turned out. Tight to the roof, even touching up there, which is where my head is. So you can see the spot where my head is, I wanted it as far away as possible. That's why we kind of come up, out, and back down. And also had a little bit of time, so we threw a windshield bar in there just with a slight angle up. Nothing too crazy on that, pretty simple. Anyways, I just thought I'd throw this video out there for you guys. Hopefully it makes a little bit of sense. If not, post your questions down in the comments. I'll try to get around and answer them for you. But that's going to be it for this one. So like the video if you liked it. Subscribe to the channel if you're new. Follow the build along. And until the next one, I'll catch you guys later.